I hate my children, and I want to scar them.
To the Rewatchers on the Pod, the podcast where we watch stuff and talk about it. You're here with me, Tyler Harris, and
Gwen Hammer,
Tyler McKinley,
Justin Hammer,
and our special guest this week,
Nicole Allen.
Nicole, thanks so much for being here. Thank you for bringing Singin' to the Rain. Singin' in the Rain. Singin' to the Rain's totally different. Great David Lynch film, but we watched Singin' in the Rain, and I took notes for most of it and then forgot and just enjoyed it. So we're doing the Tyler tag team on this one. The new
I also don't have anything written down, and I'm really bad at improv, so this is gonna suck. Let's do it.
So once I reach the end of my notes, I'm just gonna throw it to Tyler. And
if you
we'll
fail, can one of us be Gene Kelly, and just berate you for how horrible you do?
Dude's a professional troll in this film.
All right, here we go. Everything that happens is Singing in the Rain. This movie wastes no time in giving the people what they want, singing in the rain. Welcome to the premiere of The Royal Rascal. Everyone is waiting to see Don and Lena. A man is incredibly excited to see Zelda. They're less excited to see Cosmo. People's souls leave their body when Don and Lena show up. Don Lockwood tells his story from the beginning. The key to success is dignity, always dignity. Don Lockwood stumbled head over bar into a stuntman job. The Royal Rascal royally rascals. Don Lockwood is doing all the talking. I wonder what... Oh, I get it. Lena apparently reads tabloids like they were news. Don and Lena split up. Cosmo's gonna get out of here. Don Lockwood is mobbed by fans. Don Lockwood, Indiana Jones, into a poor woman's car. She attempts to get him arrested, then offers him a ride. The woman is Kathy Selden, Princess Leia's mom. Kathy tells Don how stupid his job is. Don's confidence in himself has been shaken. Mr. Simpson introduces his guests to the future of movies, then proceeds to tell them what bullshit it is. Kathy Selden comes out of a cake. Dignity. Always dignity. Kathy runs away because she's really embarrassed by her cake throw. Don Lockwood gets ready to make another movie with the same plot as his last one. Cosmo makes him laugh. Lena Lamont calls an entire generation of aristocrats dopes. Don and Lena talk shop while working. Mr. Simpson is stopping production so they can start making movies with that bullshit sound gimmick. The jazz singer is a hit. Kathy Selden is turning heads. Don and Kathy take a second take at first impressions. Turns out Kathy is a big fan after all. Don introduces Kathy to movie magic and now they're in love. Lena fails her elocution class.
Shit. Okay. So... if I'm remembering correctly, they're like, we gotta film this movie with aristocrats, and they start filming it, and the producer comes in, he's like, guess what? The jazz singer is the shit. It's like foreshadowing the Marvel franchise, and we need to start making them. And everyone's like, audio? Which is what I am like all the time when we're setting up a podcast. And
this is the only part of a podcast.
And then they're like, oh, we'll just make this movie we're making. We'll put audio in it. Lena, is that her name?
Yep.
Lena can't talk into a microphone. She doesn't get how microphones work. We're similar in that aspect. And then they realize, oh, shit, this is a disaster. They show some pre-screenings. Everyone's like, this really sucks. So it's like that X-Men movie with the girl from Game of Thrones. And so then they're like, what if we get my girlfriend, who's got a really awesome voice, to just dub over it? So they do, but they're trying to keep it a secret from Lena. Lena finds out because Zelda's a snitch. And then they fight. And after they're done fighting, they're like, fuck it, we're gonna show the movie anyway. But Lena's like, I'm gonna do exclusive interviews with every magazine and newspaper. And so that turns into a huge debacle on premiere night. And then she tries to blackmail the producer. Lena tries to blackmail the producer. And they're like, oh no, should we do it? So really all the conflict comes into the third act, it seems like. And then, and then it all resolves because they have her. Lena goes out to sing, and then they have her sing. The girl, whatever her name is, Debbie Reynolds, sings behind the curtain. But then the curtain lifts up. The Wizard of Oz moment. Everyone realizes it. I kind of missed what happened to Lena because I looked away, and I turned back. She was gone.
It's frozen in carbonite, actually.
Oh, okay. And then I'm pretty sure they. There's the scene where they're like, sweet, we're in love and we're making movies, and audio in movies is pretty damn cool. Yeah, that's all I remember.
Yep, that's it. That's basically everything. So
I do want to say, I told you this earlier, but like, I had the hardest time finding a copy of this movie.
Oh my gosh.
And so I called my mom. And I was like, hey, Mom, you got Singin' in the Rain? Because you like old movies. And she's like, I don't know. I'll go check. She texts me back. She's like, I only have a VHS. And it's not even the official VHS. It's one I recorded off of TV. And I'm like, I don't have a VCR. She's like, you can use our little travel TV that we used to use on road trips.
Oh, my God.
So
We had one of those.
But it's like, it's still, the screen is tiny, but the whole thing is huge and heavy. So like, she brings that over to my house, but unfortunately, Bye Bye Birdie is before it on this tape. So I have to fast forward through Bye Bye Birdie, which is not my favorite movie. And I forget how slow fast forwarding is on VCRs.
I'm sure it feels even slower when it's through Bye Bye Birdie.
Yeah, so I made it. Yeah, I finally started it. Holy shit. And I probably, like, I'll be honest here, I'm not a huge fan of musicals from this decade, and I'll probably go into reasons why later in this podcast, but I probably got like 3 songs in. I made it to make them laugh.
Make them laugh.
I just fast forwarded. And the only song I didn't fast forward in was the Singin' in the Rain, and then that like weird, huge montage that happens in the middle.
Wait, that's the only one you should fast forward.
I have not heard this opinion yet. I'm excited.
I feel like one of the reasons I chose this is because
Oh yes, let's go into that.
Yeah.
I've studied dance, and so I wanted to do something that I could speak to, and so like for me, I love it, but I'm like, people probably hate this. They probably get so bored.
I remember
but I love it.
when I was younger and I watched that part, it like made me feel very weird. Like I think it was the closest I had felt to like a drug trip or something at that point in my life, because I just like got to the end and I was like, do I need to shower? Like, do I need to walk around? Like, what is happening to me? It's a bizarre thing. Yeah. And it's one that, like, they just kind of go into it in the movie, and it feels like a thing that's going to be over in 3 minutes.
And
then so long.
I was a little lost. I was like, am I supposed to know why this is happening? Once again, I was drawing also. I did not. I should have paid a lot more attention to this movie today than I did. But yeah.
Yeah,
That's where the majority of their budget was spent too. It was on that section. At least
true?
according to IMDb trivia. Yeah, it was like
Oh wow.
Our sponsor for the week.
the internet said that the budget was like 1.3 million or something, and they spent like almost 700,000 on that sequence.
Wow.
With all of the costumes and time that it took to do everything. Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because there are some shots in this movie earlier on, like that scene where Don Lockwood and Cosmo are just walking across the soundstage, and you're just watching 4 separate movies being made in the background.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that was probably a very expensive shot to get to, of like just running all this stuff in the background, but it's really cool. But yeah, let's tell us about the dance. Why is this a movie you pick when you want to talk about dance? I mean,
it's just. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it later. It's like notorious that Gene Kelly was kind of a taskmaster on this, but for good reason. He's one of like the best tap dancers of all time, at least on screen, and it's like his magnum opus. You know, he wanted it to be perfect, and the dance numbers are just perfection. They really are. Even in the scenes like where Kathy Selden, because she has way less dance experience, she's in the middle of these 2 amazing professional dancers. They still manage to make her look just as good, and it's just fantastic. It's just a lot of fun. It's kind of nice to have a fun movie to talk about instead of something that's super deep.
Yes, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, and that's like it's like those dance sequences. It's not like one or two. It's like every scene where there's any amount of like movement set to music, it is insane. Like, we talked about the Make 'Em Laugh. I will talk about Make 'Em Laugh because I remember that was the scene when I first saw this movie that I was like, damn, this is so good.
Yeah.
Like,
I laughed out loud when he went through the wall.
oh yeah, it's great. And before that, he runs up and flips off of two other walls. Like, it's insane. And that the whole scene with the body, whatever that is, the cloth body.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm trying to think of what you would call that on a
dummy?
set. Dummy?
I'm so confused what you were talking about.
That's really rude of you to say. I just can't remember it. No, but yeah, like, jeez, what an incredible scene that is. And I honestly, I think when I first saw this movie too, like, I was like, this is a movie from the 50s. And for a long time, I thought that movie was set in the 50s as well.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I totally did. I didn't get it.
Yeah. And it's really this like throwback to like films from 30 years prior and everything.
It does a really good job of kind of exploring that transition better than I remember it. Mm-hmm. I mean, the last time I saw it, I was really young and didn't remember hardly anything, but just the whole, like, even just that scene where it's all a comedy, but it's also kind of gives you a good insight as to when they're trying to film the first version. I can't remember the name of the slashing butler, whatever that's called. I can't remember what it's called.
Slashing butler. Nailed it.
And she's having the hardest time, like, getting into, like, they're trying the hard time getting audio correct. And I'm sure that was a very, I mean, probably not accurate, but very real thing that they had to go through. And I felt like it was pretty well representative. That must have been a hell of a transition for that industry and you had like the snooty people who were like, audio, like, what? Yeah. And didn't take it seriously. And now it's a staple. You don't even like think about like not having it. Mm-hmm. And so, and it definitely, you see a lot of influence on movies that were to come, like The Artist and La La Land, of just how impactful. I mean, it's a whole genre, but I think particularly this film had impact on both of those films and several others that came down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So was it a transition, like, did it become an industry standard overnight, like it's portrayed in the film, or was it more gradual?
That's a good question.
I mean, I think the movie presents. It's hard to know what the time frame is in this movie.
True.
I mean, I think it was pretty. From my limited understanding, I'm pretty sure it was very much like they show as like everyone was like, nah, it's not gonna be a thing. Then The Jazz Singer, which was a real film, came out and was very successful, and then that is when everyone started taking notice and making changes to their plans and stuff.
So I haven't seen The Jazz Singer. Is that sequence the guy with the megaphone? Is that from The Jazz Singer? Okay.
No.
Okay.
That's meant to be just someone demonstrating the technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've always wanted that, and I just never looked it up. But okay, that makes sense.
I think it's kind of fascinating too that like this movie was in the 50s, looking back on a time that now is about 100 years ago, which is crazy. That like when they make the switch to sound, you have that montage of all these wacky little stupid videos that are made, and it made me think about like YouTube and all that when all these new things come out for us and how we're flooded with all this crappy content and eventually it'll figure itself out.
Right, yeah. That's totally true. So I just looked that up. So the transition from silent films to talkies took place between 1926 and 1930. So like over that amount of time, by 1930.
Still a pretty fast disruption.
Yeah.
When you'd have to like outfit all the theaters to have sound.
Oh gosh, that sounds like a huge nightmare.
Does it sound? Yeah, no, but that really is crazy, and I think it's interesting. Like you brought up The Artist, which is another movie that deals like specifically with kind of film moving on, but in a much more dark way of someone who gets left behind in that transition, and kind of what that does. But that movie's another like very beautiful, I think, look at this time for sure. That's really great.
I haven't seen The Artist, but I spent a good time on IMDb reading the trivia stuff for this movie because I had never seen Singing in the Rain. It was just one of those. It's like I've always known about it, just never got around to watching it.
Yeah.
And so I was reading various things on there, and a lot of comments on like kind of what this movie like. There's some stuff on there that's talking about how this movie was actually like critiquing. I can't remember the studio that Gene Kelly was.
Right, MGM, I think.
Yeah, MGM. Like, he was trying to get out of a contract with them, I believe. And, like, that was kind of why he was being such an asshole at the time for all of this, because he was trying to be belligerent to get released. But there was another comment that said that that transition period from silent film to movies with sound. Talkies, yeah,
As
there we go.
Still call them today.
Yeah, the talkies. There was this guy who he was lost in the transition. He was a silent film actor, and when sound started to become a thing, his voice was like actually sabotaged in the sound editing to like they like sped it up to make him sound worse than he actually did in real life, and that tanked his career. Like he was completely sidelined because people thought he was a total joke. And so yeah, just kind of like commentary on stuff like that happened at the time, which older moviegoers at the time probably would have still remembered when they saw Singing in the Rain. They could have remembered all these events from 30 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. That's crazy. That was another thing that I think this movie does a really good job of is like the idea of everyone being snooty about something. Like Kathy, when she first meets Don, is like, "Oh, you're just in movies? You're not a stage actor. You don't do Shakespeare. You don't do, all of that." And then like the idea of people who are making silent films being like, "People talking in movies? Why would anyone want that? Like, why? Like, it's so funny to see like." Everyone's just got those biases built into them about whatever, and then they get screwed over by sound. That's just the cycle of the universe.
Why are we doing a podcast?
Because we didn't learn our lesson,
Let's
obviously.
do a podcast with video.
We should release an hour-long silent episode in protest of sound itself.
That'll be like our announcement. We're transitioning to Twitch or something. We're just live streaming from now on.
Yes. But without the sound.
No sound,
Every
yeah,
once in a while, a card will pop up with what has just
yeah.
been said. We got to get something
trend setting right here, yeah.
Yes.
Silent Twitch streams.
I bet you $100 it's a thing.
It's got to exist. It's got to exist.
There's an opposite of ASMR. It's that.
No SMR. Man, yeah, Singing in the Rain still relevant. It's like pushing every medium forward still somehow.
Is that when you're at Universal Studios and you're taking the movie tour ride and you go to the Singing in the Rain section, they're like, they actually used milk instead of water because you can't see water on film. Is that true?
The milk part?
Yeah.
That specific thing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Does anyone know?
That's what I've heard, but I don't know for sure.
It sounds like one of those bullshit things that Universal would
I
just
do know
say.
that scene was shot in one take.
Wait, where was there milk?
I imagine a lot of like instead of rain, water. Like he was dancing in the milk is the joke that
They
they
had milk
make.
in the water, so you could see it more.
So that scene where he sticks his
okay.
head underneath the gutter, I was like, you'd be like so sticky after.
Yeah, what they don't tell you is Gene Kelly was lactose intolerant. He was trying
shit.
to kill himself to get out of his contract by just covering himself in as much milk as possible and shitting himself to death.
I think that lady at the beginning who was commenting on the movie, she's like, "Oh, she's so gorgeous. I think I'll kill myself." I think that was my favorite part of the whole movie.
So good.
Dude, my favorite was the guy waiting in line who thought he was waiting in line for the new Nintendo 3DS, and he was just like, Zelda!
That's one of my favorite shots in this movie because he enters frame. He just enters into an extreme close-up, which is, I think, one of my favorite choices you can make in film is just an empty frame and then someone coming into just fill the entire thing. Yeah. Zelda! I love it so much.
But that number of Singing in the Rain is probably some of the most impressive choreography, in my opinion, in this. I mean, there's lots of like big ensemble moments, but like he does some pretty cool like choreography. Like that's one of the ones I actually watched and didn't fast forward to on my ghetto, VCR. And some like the way he uses you know, the water itself as kind of a tool in the performance as well is very impressive. And that was the one that I was just kind of like, whoa, this is impressive.
So this is one of those things I'm curious, like, that scene is legendary, obviously, but there's like, and legendary in the fact that like you hear like Gene Kelly had the flu, he was about to die when he was doing this scene.
He's like intolerant, covered in milk.
Right, yeah.
All those
He
things
pushed
you
off
constantly
Brian
hear.
Russell to make the final shot.
I've also heard that a lot of it was improv.
Yeah.
Do you know if that is true?
As far as I know, which could all be wrong, because, you know, it's all rumor.
Right.
Don't worry, we're
is that
very
they
used to
had,
that.
obviously, because if you watch it knowing this, there's no way they can't have had shots
Yep.
planned.
Yeah.
Because cameras were exactly where they needed to be. The policeman comes in and it's right in frame. Like, they can't do that. Totally improv. So they had all the shots lined out and he had it blocked, but he didn't have it in detail. And he knew his space. He knew the music. That's when you just get out of Gene Kelly's way and you let him do his thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, as far as I know, one take, and so like choreography, not technically choreography,
Right.
it's just him being amazing. And because he didn't have to worry about any of his dance partners not living up to his standard, it was great.
Once you've got one perfect dancer on the thing, it becomes really easy. No, I think that is like, I'm not like an expert on dance by any means, but it does feel like one of those things. It is one of those scenes that when I watch it, some of the things that happen, I forget that it's a dance or that it could be choreographed. It just feels so natural and like it's really interesting.
And I think that's why this one actually works that way. If it was improv, this is the only one that really would work that way. It makes it playful. It's that moment of him leaving the house and just being like just giddy, and it wouldn't work in another situation, another number, but it works perfectly for this one, for the mood and everything.
Yeah. I think that kind of along with the choreography, like the physical comedy bits in this, even the stuff that's just at the beginning when it's like that flashback of him telling the story, and which is another thing I love. It's one of those things that film you can kind of do in film better than you can in other mediums. Is he's telling the story and then you're presented with the actual story, which is very
Right.
different from what he's telling, and that's
Right.
always delightful to me. But the even just the stuff of him and Cosmo on stage doing like their vaudeville routine with the fiddles and the swapping of bows and stuff like that is so incredible. And like I can't even imagine how long something like that takes to put together or to like nail all those moments down. Because a lot of these too, like there's not a lot of cuts during those scenes. You're just here it is, you know, and it's really incredible.
Yeah, you have to do the dance number in its entirety, and if you mess up, start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And in that way, it is a lot more like theater, which I think is an interesting thing for movies as musicals to kind of stay close to that kind of exercise, I guess, as far as like those single takes. I think of something like the Les Mis movie that they just recently made, and that's obviously much more of a like film than it is a theater piece. Whereas something like Singin' in the Rain kind of splits itself down the middle, I feel like, in that regard. But maybe we've already talked about it, but Nicole, what is your favorite dance number in this this movie?
Oh, well, Moses Supposes is just killer.
Okay, yeah.
Like that's one that it's been on my like top to-do list to try and learn how to do that dance number. But man, it's technically just very, very, very difficult, and they're both just highly athletic and just spot on. It's just amazing. Yeah. And a lot of fun. And that's, I think, one of the few numbers that were actually written for this show. Most of them were like songs that they pulled together. So you know that this was like, I don't know, you can tell it was Gene Kelly really showing off.
Yeah.
And he's showing off.
Yeah. That is another thing, like noticing watching this movie, you get the credits at the beginning, and at some point it says suggested by the song Singin' in the Rain.
Suggested. I saw that too.
Yeah, not based on, not inspired by, suggested by, as if the song itself was like, what if? Like someone heard that song and was like, oh, the transition from movies to talkies.
Obviously.
We'll get Gene Kelly. But it made me think, because I actually did want to ask that question. I wasn't sure like how many of those songs were just pulled from outside sources and how many were created for it. Because this was the era of that kind of musical, White Christmas with Bing Crosby. That is, I don't know how many original songs there are in that, but like a lot of those songs also are existing songs that they kind of pull in and build this story around. And that's, I think that's the thing that I like about Singin' in the Rain is the story that they tell, I think, actually works really well. It could work really well on its own if you wanted to take some of those songs out, even.
Yeah.
The characters are fun enough and interesting enough that you could make a movie just about that transition. It's obviously made much better by the dance numbers and the songs, but yeah, I just think that's a really interesting thing.
I think that's, don't want to be the downer guy, but that is actually what I dislike about musicals is the, I'm all about narrative. And so I'm like, it's the same problem I have with like a lot of Marvel movies is I equate old school musical songs to Marvel fight action sequences.
Oh, I totally get that.
We're going to take a break from storytelling to just dick around. It's fun. But it doesn't move anything forward.
That's how I felt about this movie, too. Like, all the songs felt really like, all right, Gene Kelly wants to dance now. We're going to put something here. Like, a little bit indulgent. I didn't mind for this movie.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's kind of like you go into the genre knowing what you're going to get. Like, I am at fault for expecting anything different, right? Like, where it's still like apparently I didn't fast forward as many numbers as I thought because all the ones we've mentioned I watched, and I think obviously the two we mentioned of Singing in the Rain and Moses Supposes are the ones that I like really like because like I said I was doing other stuff during the time, and they're the ones that caught my attention and really I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So yeah, but that is something I dislike about them as film, I guess. But once again, like when you've got such talented people doing their thing, because I think that's something that's different between if you look at La La Land, and particularly the number in La La Land where they're on the hillside by the car, that dance number is not particularly impressive or engaging. So it kind of does hurt that film for me. It not like doesn't ruin the whole film, but it isn't as engaging as something like the numbers in Singing in the Rain, where everything's just top notch. So I think there's a value and a perspective you have to go by for these things, which I have been lacking for a long time.
Yeah, and for a long time that was like the standard is musicals were just songs put together and you filled in the gaps. And it was like later writers like Rodgers and Hammerstein that actually made a song actually have the story progress during the song. And that was just unheard of. So this was before that, or like in the midst of it, but still holding on to like what was traditional. So yeah, what you're saying is totally true. It's like, oh, if you're not into dance numbers, then just stop watching during the song. That's how I am in action movies a lot of the time. Unless they do something really creative, I'm not paying attention.
Like in Skyscraper when The Rock jumps off a crane over 100 feet into a building. That's the stuff I want to see.
Well, and something about just old school film in general. And when you talked about that shot where it's like there's multiple scenes being filmed at once.
Yeah.
Because there is, like, I know it's beat to death, but there is no CGI. And that is very fun to go back to old things where incredible things are being seen that are actually there or faked in a very physical way. Whereas, we're talking about action sequences now, especially in, big budget movies, it becomes so desensitizing because it doesn't feel tangible and you're just kind of glazed over for a while. And whereas something like this, and you can take that to more than just dance numbers. You can take it to special effects. You can take it to whatever. It's a lot more engaging and a lot more like, holy shit, how do they do it? How many people died making this? Like that type of thing.
I don't know who's singing in the rain.
That Donald O'Connor's is actually the fourth Cosmo they got, because in Make 'Em Laugh they just kept going too far. So yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I think that's. I think also, like, in thinking about this movie, the fact that it's in Technicolor, like, places it in a very specific time and feel in my mind.
It was originally black and white, wasn't it?
No.
It was not?
Nope.
I could have sworn I've seen a black and white version of
It's
this.
probably because it was on, like, a TV.
Like a black and white
like,
TV.
yeah,
I was probably in a black and white TV in a movie that I watched, I think, is probably what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's
Well,
in the background
parts
of
of it
Gremlins,
are
yeah.
black and white, so maybe your memory's thinking about, like,
Maybe,
the
yeah.
old,
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, I interrupted your Technicolor.
No, yeah, but I think that's a really that's like such a specific look for a film, and I found myself asking, like, how many years are we away from someone being like, I'm gonna make a movie in Technicolor again? You know what I mean? Is there? I feel like there has to be somebody who's like, you know, we have all these people making 70mm films again because it does harken back to those epics of the 60s and 70s. Like, there has to be some director who's like, fuck it, I'm going to do it in Technicolor, and we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to do that because we've lost, like, all the easy technology to do that now. Like, we've got to create something new to do that again. But yeah, it was just an interesting thing, and I think that lends these films such an interesting feel. Like, it's such a unique thing that couples that, like, brings those films together. But yeah, I think one of the other things that I thought about is, as I was watching this movie, was kind of the style of humor, and especially with Cosmo's character. Like, I don't know that there's probably less than 5 lines that he has that don't end in a joke or, like, act as a pun or an inversion of language in a way that, like, confounds other characters, or that they just completely ignore. And it's so fast too. Like, I was trying to think of something that's like humor that's as fast as that now, and I was having a hard time thinking of anything. But I think that's another, like, great hallmark of the performance. And I think, like, looking specifically at Donald O'Connor's, how much of that is informed by just his timing, and how much of that comes from dance training, and, you know what I mean? There's all these factors that go into that I just think are really interesting. Yeah, so Justin and Gwen, was this your first time seeing it as well?
I saw it once 10 years ago when I was packing to move and in a very, very bad mood.
Okay.
I was not excited to watch
That sounds
it today.
like 10 years ago, Gwen, to me.
You know, 10 years ago me. You okay over there? I was not excited to watch this movie today, but I really enjoyed it. I was surprised.
Were you afraid of where it was going to put you mental? Like, did you think it was going to take you back to 10 years
I remember
ago, Gwen?
not liking the
You're just
movie.
going to start
Okay,
packing
so-
your stuff away in your house.
Gotta move to fucking
Depressed
Provo
as
again.
fuck when I watched it Singing in the Rain. Can't watch this movie.
Oh man.
Yeah, we'll need to hear more
Moved to
about that.
I would get depressed if that's what I had to do.
Dude, I get
Literally, I
depressed
was
if you guys
just
had to
moving
move to
from
Provo
Cedar to
again.
Provo. That's,
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
I was not
fair.
happy about it.
Oh, it's amazing.
This is before we met, by the way.
If she had known, I'm sure
Yeah.
she would have been fine with that. Yeah, I guess, are there any other things that you guys want to talk about kind of in relation to this movie at all? Anything?
Do we want to?
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, do we want to talk in more detail about that middle section, dream, everything?
I actually did. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
On, like, the dream ballet
Yes,
thing.
yeah.
Oh, man, I think it's great. I mean, I can't remember the name of the actress, but the one in the green dress with legs for days, literally.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. She's just gorgeous. And so for me as a dancer, it's just like, it's just like delightful. I could just watch it all day.
Yeah.
But it is, at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm like, this is not normal for most people. This is weird.
I will
and
say,
it's really long.
yeah, one of the things that is stuck in my head from this movie forever is just the way he walks when he's like going to knock on all the doors. I don't know why, but that's just like plays in my mind sometimes.
That's like Broadway man walk.
Yes, I'm traveling much further than it looks. You know, like, so amazing. Yeah, and you mentioning that woman make me realize why I might have felt weird about that scene when I was younger. Actually, I'm like having that realization right
and
now.
His hat flows off his head. It's amazing. Oh man,
I was like, I just throwing dice in the air. Is that what's happening?
It's a
Or what-
coin.
It's a coin.
Yeah.
he's like Scarface or something.
I loved that scar. That was A+ makeup.
But then at the very end, that like close up of Gene Kelly where he's stuck in the frame, but then you're getting pulled further and further away from the background. Classic.
Yeah, it's so cool. It is like one of those things where it's like it's clearly a more theatrical thing, but they do just have so much space to work with that they get to do really unconventional things with it, and that's really fun. But yeah, it is bizarre. I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, did the movie end? Like, I wasn't sure what was happening.
Yeah. And my favorite thing is that whole scene is introduced and ended with him saying, he's just describing to them what the scene's gonna look like.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm sure it'll
that's
look
what
better in film or whatever the line is
Like,
at the end.
And then the best part, RF's like, I can't quite picture it. And you're like, we just watched it for 15 minutes. What can't you picture?
I like to think that what happened between like us coming in and out of that room was basically Tyler describing the second half of the movie. It was like, he'll go in, it's gonna be this girl, and they're like, and his hat flies off. And it's just like perfectly imagined in Gene Kelly's mind, and everyone else is like,
I don't know.
oh, all right.
Just do it and we'll see.
There's gonna be sound, right? Okay, yeah. Let's do it. We got nothing else. Let's just run with it.
I was super lost. Because I was so confused. I was like, is he explaining a scene in the movie of like the current movie they're making, like the swashbuckling kitchen man or whatever it's called? And
Nailed it again.
they like. I was like, man, apparently they're doing a whole time period shift. You're gonna have to refilm this whole fucking movie. And I was very concerned. And then he says, he's like, I can't quite picture it, but I'll just have to see it on film. I'm like, that is a bold statement from a producer to just go wild with the budget, you know?
That's the producer every creative dreams of, I think.
Well, and I have never been able to quite jive what you see in that dream sequence with the way that they describe the plot is supposed to be when they're doing like the good morning number and they're like, and this is what the story will be. It's not the same.
Yeah.
And it is always just kind of bugs me, but I love it.
Yes. That movie just has a really wild second act.
Just like, okay.
So did that extended sequence, was that the one where the lady had the really long, like, drapey
long
scarf?
veil, yeah.
Was it just a fan that made it do that?
Yeah.
Just a fan.
Full fans in the right, yeah.
Big fans.
They
That
had
is
like a fan that
Hollywood
blew it and the
fans.
fan from behind that blew it up.
Magic
high.
fuckery.
It
I
is-
was
it's so-
amazing.
Yeah, I think as a child and like when I danced, I was like, wow. It
Yeah,
really is.
I want to show it to my 5-year-old. She will just love it.
Yeah, for sure.
After you show him part 8 of Twin Peaks.
Yes,
That'll be the come down for him.
That comes next.
It's time to teach you kids about film.
You know how you watch a scary movie and then a Disney movie? That's my version of it.
Except for it's like the most horrifying possibility. Like that's. Oh man, yeah.
dear.
I
Here,
can't
watch
wait.
someone's head get crushed. Now there's a scarf.
If you want to watch a live stream of Justin and Gwen's children watching part 8 of Twin Peaks. Yeah, this I will say this movie's just delightful from start to finish.
There's one thing that stood out to me, which is kind of funny watching it like now, is people talk a lot about, it was 20 minutes before the female character even spoke, and it was 13 minutes, I checked, before Lena spoke, but it's on purpose, and it's like the part of the plot, and it's actually like really fun.
Yeah.
That it's like, yeah, she is just for looks. Do not let anyone hear her. And that is just not really kosher now.
That's very true. I do that scene after the movie has ended and she keeps trying to talk, I think is so hilarious. And then that explosion backstage is really great.
That's so great.
Something I've just got like all these trivia stuff
Please.
in my head because
Hit
I
us
learned
with
that the actress that plays Lena is the one who actually sang the song that what's her face
Is
is
dubbed
supposed
over.
to be dubbing.
It's like
so
a
is she dubbed?
Dubception,
Yeah,
yeah.
yep.
It's crazy. Yeah, because the actress has a very deep, rich voice. Who plays Lena, and way better than Kathy Hilton. So
Yeah.
she dubs over her own dubbing.
That
Yeah,
is insane.
it's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of dubbing in this movie because even the tap number with Debbie Reynolds, they dubbed the tap noises over it because they weren't good enough for Gene Kelly.
After she like bloodied her feet too, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Tap dancing is hard, and she hadn't done any before this movie.
Wow.
So like to be able to look as good as she did and be like as charming and smiling with her feet like ready to fall off is just, oh man, that's amazing. Yeah. She's a star.
This stuff like Make 'Em Laugh, that also is dubbed, right? That feels, I don't know, like vocally it felt like
a lot of it is, yeah.
Yeah. Man, yeah, I can't
and
imagine.
it's funny because it's like I feel like a lot of movies now, a majority of it is dubbed over
Right.
afterwards. Like rarely do we have it actually recorded live on the soundstage. Probably because what we witness in this movie, what's happening,
Yeah.
it's interesting that that's the standard now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. So this, I know Singin' in the Rain is also a musical now, right?
Yeah, it is on
There's a
stage.
stage
I've
version?
seen it on stage. Yeah. It's
Okay.
an adaptation of the movie. Yeah.
Right. And is it pretty recent? I feel like it was like within the last 30, I say recent, within the last 30 years or something like, I wasn't sure if that's...
I think it is fairly recent, maybe
Okay.
the last 20 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's pretty much the same. I think they've added like a song.
Okay.
It's like DLC.
Yeah, I think they give Lena
musical
give
DLC.
Lena a number, I think. And
Oh,
she's like
interesting.
she's more interesting and fun.
It's a re-release.
Yeah.
How does it translate? Like when you saw it, did it feel still like pretty much like the movie? Like
Yeah.
do those things translate pretty well?
Yeah,
or-
it really does. The only thing is like, well, if only it was Gene Kelly, but like
Right.
honestly, it really it translates well, and I think that's because what we talked about it being so similar to stage
Yeah.
in the way that it was structured, that it was a really easy transition to the stage for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because this movie is consistently ranked as like one of the all-time great movies, and it's like for it to be ranked as a really great movie and have such a close affinity to the stage, like that's really cool that is the case for this movie.
Yeah.
Feats have only been achieved by Shrek before.
As every high school in the state of Utah can tell you.
Yes. Also, I hear Beauty and the Beast is good, or at least by the volume that I see it being done. It's funny because there are so many musicals that are being adapted from movies now, like Big. The movie Big that everyone knew when they saw Big originally, like this needs like 15 musical numbers and to be done on a stage instead of like filmed. Or The Wedding Singer is a musical now as well, which
Does
is really
SpongeBob SquarePants
interesting.
musical ever take off?
Yeah,
I think it did really well, actually.
Yeah, I feel like it did.
Weird. Just weird.
You can pretty much slap SpongeBob on anything at this point. It's not even, I feel like it's ascended past like a show. It's like a mythology and something that exists in everyone's conscious at this point.
Cult.
Yeah, I've never
That's
seen
the
an
word you're
episode
looking
of
for.
that
Thank you.
show, and I have seen so many memes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you say you've never seen an episode of SpongeBob? Is that what you said? Oh. Man, my heartburn just got worse.
I have not actively sought it out, and therefore have not watched it.
The good seasons, I think, are all free on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
So,
Is that the third or fourth time we've said that on this podcast?
haven't fucking seen SpongeBob. do not go past season 3.
Yeah, sure.
It's like halfway through, I think.
Okay.
Somewhere around the best day ever is
Once you see the
turning
title
point.
"Best Day Ever," don't
turn it off and walk away.
Just stop.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. Great. Are there any other? Do you have any other trivia for us from Singing in the Rain?
What's his face? Donald David,
Donald
the
O'Connor.
guy that has like 8 names. That's a bit of trivia right there. I looked that guy up on IMDb, and yeah, he's got like 8 middle names. I'll start with D. He apparently was smoking like 4 packs of cigarettes a day while he was doing this filming, and so he almost died doing that. The backflips and stuff that he was jumping off walls and everything.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Some of those stunts they were doing as stuntmen looked pretty crazy too. I was going to bring that up when I was talking about people dying, but then we moved on. But like, I walks into a building and it explodes. I'm like, how the hell? Like, back then, how do you do that?
Yeah.
That man probably is dead. Or even just them throwing him over the bar like that.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit.
Or as we learned from The Fall, he's probably in a hospital
Yeah.
trying to get a young child to get him pain medication.
Oh, yeah. That's
To destroy her for life.
The Fall is all of
movie.
It's all an adaptation based on that one actor who was the stuntman of a stuntman.
Oh man.
They're like, not every stuntman ends up like Don Lockwood.
Seriously though, what a story.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, any other closing thoughts on Singing in the Rain? Anyone have anything else? It's a delightful movie. Everyone should watch it, I think. It's really fun. Well, we will... if I will go ahead and
Plug us.
tease next week's episode. We're going to have my friend Rob Starks on, and we're going to be watching The Babadook.
Fuck no.
Yes.
I was waiting. I forgot that I had not told
my
anyone that
gosh.
yet, and I'm
Is that a
very
scary
excited.
movie?
Yes. I haven't
Fuck.
seen it because I'm bad with scary movies.
But it'll be fun. We're gonna watch it. It'll be great.
Too.
We'll all bring blankets and we can leave the lights on. Nah,
Are you going to cuddle with me that night? Like, are you going to sleep
I
over?
mean, I
'Cause
assume Katie will be here.
look, she's not very strong. All right. I love her, but she...
I'll be bringing Babadook bats with me. They're weapons that work exclusively against Babadooks. Don't hit your friends.
Are they automated? Because I
Only
need to
for
sleep.
Babadooks. But yeah, so we're watching that next week. It'll be a lot of fun. Even just to hear Tyler the week following the Babadook, I'm sure will be delightful. And then if you want to reach out to us on our email, it's rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com, and our Twitter and Instagram are @rewatcherspod. Follow us, hang out with us. We post stuff sometimes. But we will go ahead and take a brief break and be back with some recommendations. Welcome back to Rewatchers on the Pod, our recommendations section where we talk about some other stuff that we watched during the week or weeks or months, whatever. We're pretty casual about it. Tyler, go ahead and start us off. What did you watch?
Okay, well, because I'm an idiot and I can't let go, and I should just move on, but I can't. That trailer for Clone Wars Season 7 dropped. I'm like, that actually looks pretty good. And I've tried Clone Wars before, and I can't.
Just started running back into the arms of someone not meant for him.
Because, like, I've tried Clone Wars before, and I'm like, why do people like this shit? Like, why are they so passionately in love with this shit? So, yeah, I've started that again. But I'm going through and, like, reading the summaries. I'm like, does that sound like a one-off episode, or does that sound like something important to the overall plot? So I watch the ones that sound like they are. And I am enjoying it more this way.
Good.
But it's all investment for that Season 7. It better be as good as that trailer looks.
Is that like this month?
It
that
is
drops?
February,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, that's really soon.
I'm not going to get done in time. I'll just watch it when I get around to it. Because I'm not, like, super invested.
I
But
heard that you have to watch season 1 and then it gets good in season 2.
wait,
that-
why would you have to watch Season 1?
Just to know what's happening.
I mean, if you watch Attack of the Clones, you'll know what's happening.
Oh,
Because,
okay.
like, don't make the mistake of watching the Clone Wars animated movie. That is the worst piece
That
of
is a
garbage.
thing?
Look, I have been pretty vocal about my hate for The Last Jedi. The Clone Wars animated movie, it might be the worst thing I've ever seen.
Ooh.
And I've seen the Warcraft movie.
Hey, that was honestly, at this point in cinematic history, that's like middle of the list
That's
for me.
true.
I think.
That's true. There's Batman versus Superman's on there. But yeah, so there's that. And then I crammed in a bunch of my Oscar stuff right the final moment. So today I watched, last night I watched Parasite, finally. And good grief, that thing is wonderful. A little bit different than I thought it was going to be.
You didn't really watch anything before?
No, I had no
Okay,
clue. Cool. I didn't even, I watched one trailer a long time ago. And have you seen it yet, Justin?
No.
Yeah.
I will say, but I actually think that trailer is totally fine to watch. And is actually, if you're on the fence about it, it's a good trailer to watch. But then know that it's not necessarily that.
Yeah,
it's really.
I mean, we talked about it a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's great. And it just won Best Picture tonight, so that's awesome. And then I watched Joker this morning, right before I watched Singing in the Rain right after, and then immediately drove to the Oscars. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on this. I think where I don't get the hype behind it.
Joker?
Yeah, it's I mean, there's really great things about it. Like there's like probably like brief like 3-minute moments where I'm like, this is what this movie wants to be. And there's wonderful cinematography and production design throughout the whole thing. And Joaquin Phoenix does a really good job. I feel like his performance is held back a little bit, not from his own fault, but from some writing and especially directing. I think that there's some weird directorial choices in that film that no other like supporting characters, especially their reactions to him and his decisions do not feel real. And so it's hard to connect with the gravity of what's happening on the screen because everyone feels like they're acting in a movie and they're like hitting their marks and they're reading a script. So that really hurt the movie a lot for me, I think. And it's hard to, everyone's like, oh, this movie's so tense. I'm like, I have a hard time buying into the tension because everything feels fake. Yeah. But yeah. But if you do want to see some cool production stuff and some good acting, go as from Joaquin Phoenix at least, go see it and watch it. And what else did I watch? Did I watch anything else? No. I'll make one last plug for this band. I just snapped one day and I bought $120 worth of vinyl from Me Without You. So, yeah, Me Without You, great band. Please listen.
Yeah, very good. Great. Nicole, what did you have for us?
So I have been watching, this is probably might be old news for some people, but on Hulu, this travel series. Do you know Richard Ayoade? Who's in IT Crowd?
Oh, yes.
Anyway, he does a show called Travel Man, where he travels to cities for 48 hours and he brings a guest with him. He's got Paul Rudd on one of them, and he's got most of them are British people, British celebrities, but he goes to different cities and travels, and he's just the driest British humor, and it is delightful. If you like travel, or even if you don't like travel, you'd probably like this too. It's just so funny. And books too. I just got an audiobook of his latest book that he wrote called Ayoade on Top, and he analyzes the movie A View from the Top, the Gwyneth Paltrow movie that's just really like mediocre, and he analyzes it as if it's high art. And so I am very excited to read that book, or I guess listen to the audiobook. Yeah, and it is. I've listened to like the summary excerpt, and it is so funny.
Does he read the audiobook?
Yeah, he
too?
does.
Okay,
He
great.
does.
That's awesome.
So it's just delightful so far. If you enjoy podcasts like this where people talk about movies and analyze them, this is like the satire of that. I would recommend that because it's been delightful so far.
That sounds amazing. I love him from IT Crowd and like
Dark Place.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Freaking incredible.
Oh,
You're a true believer too. I probably met like 3 other people who have seen this.
I'm obsessed with Dark Place.
Good. I definitely want to check that out. I'm not super into travel shows, but I'm super into him. So
it is
that sounds
so
great.
funny. He's not interested in most of the popular things. It is
awesome.
wonderful.
Cool. Great. Yeah, I'll check that out. Gwen, what did you have for us?
Well, this week was kind of a week, so all I managed to do was finish Wanderers by Chuck Wendig, which I talked about a little bit last week.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
It was a fun read. So the thing is, he's really great talking about, there's two pieces to the story. There's the disease part and there's the supercomputer part. And I kept waiting for the supercomputer part to stop being hand wavy, because the disease part, he talks a lot about like zoonotic jumps and disease vectors and like all these different categories of diseases and makes it really believable. And then it gets to the supercomputer part and he's like, there's a supercomputer and this happens for reasons. And it never got away from that for the supercomputer part, so that was disappointing. And the characters were all fun, but the character development felt a little bit unearned in places. So,
have you read a lot of Chuck Wendig before?
No, that was the first one.
I haven't read any, but I've heard that's kind of a thing of him. A lot of interesting like ideas and descriptions, and then the character development is very like just.
I was surprised. I went on Goodreads and read it today just to see what other people thought about it, and people were like, "The characters were so good and so unique and so developed," and I was like, "Kinda, I guess." And people really loved this book, and I just like it was fun, and that was it wasn't great. It ended a little bit more like a horror story than I expected, which was kind of a fun twist. But yeah, that's it for this week.
Well, and at least it gave us Unfuckwithable.
Yes,
right? Which is
that
great.
it did.
Yeah, that's a thing to take us. That's a word that's in that book that we all love.
Oh, I thought this was a sequel book or something.
No.
That would be great.
I think Gwen has already trademarked Unfuckwithable for her
Unfuckwithable
autobiography.
sounds like a stand-up bit for a female comedian. I'm just going to say that right now.
It comes from a washed-up rock star, so...
Well, great. Well, so this week I finally finished The Body Problem.
Yeah.
And I had a really good time with it. I'm excited to see where we go from here.
It's very different.
That's kind of what I've gathered a little bit from like hearing you guys talk about what is the next book? I forgot.
The Dark Forest.
Dark Forest, that's right. So yeah, I'll probably start that sometime in the next week and kind of work through those next couple books. But yeah, I'm intrigued enough by like a lot of the ideas that are presented. I find myself after I finish reading for a while, not that I'm thinking about the story or anything, but like what a small piece of garbage I am in the grand scheme of
right?
the world.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Just you
and
wait.
bad. And like, so we'll see how I fare. If I'm no longer on the podcast, it's probably just because I'm huddled in blankets waiting for the end. But yeah, I'm interested to see kind of where some of that stuff goes. I guess I'm going to talk about. I was debating on whether I was going to talk about this or not. But on Monday night this week, I went to Vivint Smart Home Arena and watched Monday Night Raw.
How could you not talk about this?
Presented by the WWE. And it was really delightful. I went having not watched a single episode of Raw. I've watched a lot of other current wrestling, but I haven't watched any of that. So I only knew like 2 wrestlers there. But I will say it was one of the most fun crowd experiences I've had at anything. Wrestling fans are terrible garbage on the internet. Do not join any wrestling groups unless you want to just wonder why a bunch of people are still watching something they clearly hate so much. But when you go to a wrestling thing, there are delightful people all around you who just want to talk about wrestling, and it's exactly the type of mood I've been in for the last 3 months. So it was really great. I went with my friend Brandon, who is knows much more about wrestling than me, and has been being my Sherpa through 30 years of wrestling content, which I very much appreciate. Oh, Brandon, who was on this podcast for The World's End. And it was really delightful. It's one of those things, too, where I think just going to a live event that's being broadcast on television that isn't like just sport, like isn't just a basketball game or a football game, but is actually a produced piece of content where they are taking very obvious commercial breaks when you're there and then just showing you commercials for the stuff you've already bought or probably seen if you bought a ticket to go to this thing is really interesting. But it was a blast. I saw Brock Lesnar and my favorite person in wrestling, Paul Heyman, who is just the loud manager of wrestlers that you hate. But it was a blast. And
Was it pretty packed?
Yeah, it was. So we were actually sat like above, we were in the first row of the upper bowl. And I think that the way that I'm learning, I think they sell these like wrestling events, especially these live events, is that they sell the lower bowl. And once that is completely sold, then they open up sections of the upper bowl.
Oh, gotcha.
So not all of the sections were even like available to purchase. But there was a pretty good amount. I think about half of the upper bowl was completely full as well. But we sat next to a guy who was there with his two sons who were probably like 11 and 13. And that guy was just an encyclopedia of knowledge. Like he was calling moves before they happened, like in a way that there was just so much joy emanating from that man and it was a blast. But yeah, it was really great. I think Seth Rollins is on the Raw roster, and right now he has a gimmick where he is the Monday Night Messiah, who he had a match several months ago with a character called The Fiend, who basically anyone who faces The Fiend is irrevocably changed after they go in the ring with The Fiend. And Seth Rollins came out thinking he was going to be the Jesus Christ of wrestling, and that gimmick sounds very dumb. And it is very, very dumb, but in the best way possible. Just look up some of his Monday Night Messiah promos. They are ridiculously stupid. But yeah, it was a blast. I love wrestling so much, as anyone who's
The way you
listened
opened
knows.
with that, you were like looking around like timidly, like it was going to be something really bad. I thought you were about to announce that you went to like a satanic seance orgy. And I was like, and you were recommending that for all of us.
That's just Tuesdays for me now. That's
Tuesday Night Raw.
But yeah, go watch some wrestling somewhere. I don't know. Justin, what'd you have for us?
Just real quick, because we've been talking about this. I started playing Doom 2016 again.
Yeah.
I played it when it came out, loved it. I'm playing it again, prepping for Doom Eternal, and I fucking love this game so much.
Yeah.
It's so great. Yeah. So, just echo Tyler's recommendation from a couple weeks ago where he said he's been playing it. And then also, I started watching the Sabrina series on Netflix.
Okay, yeah.
I bounced off of it like after the first episode. It wasn't my thing. I thought that it might be my thing, but it's not. So I could see how other people would enjoy it, but it's just not mine. So.
Yeah, I am right with you on that. I also tried a while ago. I think when it first came out, actually, I was actually kind of excited for it because I was excited for the take that was promised to me, but I don't feel either I had my expectations wrong or I don't know. It needs to be a little bit more quirky and self-aware, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and it takes itself just a little too seriously.
Yeah, I agree. In addition to that, I have started watching the new Dracula series. It's on Netflix as well, and I'm only like this is something like I knew I wasn't going to sit down and watch it ever probably, so I've only been watching while I've been working out. So I'm not like really into it, but it's interesting. Like I feel like it. Something that I was thinking about was one of the classes that Gwen took, I think her senior year of college, was like was it Deviance and
Victorian Deviance.
Victorian Deviance, yeah. And I think that this Dracula take kind of falls in line with that because, like, yeah, I don't want to dig too much into it, and I've still got quite a bit to go before I can really say if I like it or not. Yeah, it's interesting so far. So
And
I'll get back to you on that one.
This is the BBC produced
I think
one,
so,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been interested in that because I think it's the same creative team that did Sherlock.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I think
Okay.
that's how it was being advertised.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what you had to say about
Yeah,
it for sure.
I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, I think that concludes us for this week. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us and
Thank you.
bringing us Singing in the Rain. Join us next week where we watch Babadook.
Shit.
I'm so excited for all of this. But you've been here with me, Tyler Harris,
Gwen Hammer.
Tyler McKinley.
Justin Hammer.
and our special guest.
Nicole Allen.
Thanks so much. See you later.
Ready.